I would like to take this opportunity to invite Rhett. Where is Rhett? There you go, Rhett. Columnist, writes for the various magazines, the Forbes. There are half a dozen, just look him up, Rhett Powers. Successful entrepreneur, built a business, exited that, travels the world, interviews 1 million people a year, perhaps?
Something like that.
Something like that. I would like for you to spend, if you wouldn't mind, 10 or 15 minutes, however, whatever makes you happy. Talk about two things. One is your journey of being an entrepreneur, what made you successful, and then talk to us a little bit about the habits, because I know you're a professional coach. How do we improve ourselves as entrepreneurs and business owners?
Okay.
And then wrap that up with a little bit, because your variety of the number of people that you meet globally, tell us a little bit about the perceptions that you're hearing about the global economy and what you think is happening over the next 12 to 24 months.
Don't go anywhere.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to blow that up a little bit.
Okay.
After Matthew spoke, which I thought was incredible, and thank you for warming us up, Matthew. I'm going to ignore what you asked me to do.
Oh, okay. I can roll with that.
In perfect Linqto style, please sit.
Thank you.
Because I think the most important conversation is to sit and talk to you for a few minutes.
Oh.
Because Matthew talked about the why. Now I want to talk about the organization a little bit and the culture you're trying to build. Because when people go to invest, we all know that they invest often in people, right? And organizations and the team. So if you don't mind, I can do that. I can do what you asked me to do later, but I want to talk to you a little bit about the culture that you're building, the team that you're surrounding yourself with, because I think people want to get to know you a little bit and know a little bit more about what drives you, motivates you, and pushes you, and your vision for this. So bear with me for a few minutes. Is that okay? Is that okay? All right. He's more interesting than me. So
no. So I'm in a little bit of a pickle here because I was not prepared for it. So I will though speak from where's my colleague Alan? Where's Alan?
And if some of the team wants to come up and help you, give you cover.
Yes. No, I think it's a great example. So let's start with this. Let me pick up on Matthew's theme just a little bit.
Yeah, please.
When a lot of us, or all of us, are investors in some fashion.
Right.
And if you go back to the ages and the time that you looked at the wealthy getting really wealthy, and you looked at the demographics of those people, they were like worth $50, $100, $200 million. They had a connection to Wall Street. Those are the people that got access to Facebook and Google and Amazon before they went to IPO companies. You couldn't do that. Right. You absolutely couldn't. So as we were developing Linqto and the model came up, make access to pre-IPO unicorn companies, which is away from the angel investment side, but closer to the ones that have gone through a lot of investments through professional VC companies, and a lot of the risk has been baked out. They've got a great valuation, and make it accessible to Main Street. We're Main Street. And so when you start to look at the power and vision of the decentralization of private equity, the democratization of access for us, and obviously we're limited, our hands are tied by FINRA rules about who accredited investors are, and once that opens up a little bit more, we'll be able to allow more people to do this, and we're making statements about it all the time. So when you look at the vision and the mission of the company, there's this very warm feeling about the mission is way more important than the money. A little bit expensive according to Matthew, but appropriately priced for us at the moment.
Right.
But the vision and the mission that we're embarking on is important. And what's really fascinating is we've had very a very easy time recruiting new employees. Because once they understand who we are, what we're doing, they're on board. They want to work for us. They want to. I mean, we've got investors that were investors in the company first. And Ray can tell you, I mean, we do these events all the time and hands go up. Every location we go, all of our investors are saying, guys, if you have I have a job, I do this, I do that. But if you have a spot for me to work with your company, we'll do anything. Just let us in. Let me in. Let's join you.
So talk about a little bit about the culture that you're building. How are you doing that? What is your, how are you building a culture intentionally? I know that's a broad question, but.
Actually, it's a good question, and I didn't think about it until I got a comment from one of our investors, and we call them members.
What was the comment?
She said she was supposed to come to Portugal. Unfortunately, she had to go to South Africa, and she couldn't make the flights work. And she says, Karim, let me tell you something. She says, every single person that I've spoken to in your company has such empathy, consideration, kind, and respectful. And I thought about that. I said, how is that possible? We have never talked about culture building in the company.
Okay.
Never. We've never said, this is what our corporate culture needs to be. We've never got together as a team and says, this is what our HR policy. We've never got together. And then you start looking at the leadership, and you look at the people that are brought in to support the leadership and expand the leadership model, and you start to notice a particular character and trait. They're respectful, intelligent, kind, and want to help. And that is sort of an organic building of the culture, which.
As you get bigger and you grow, because this is going to blow up, how will you be more intentional about that and try to make sure that you don't lose that energy and that goodness and the commitment to the mission that people have now? Because you have committed. It sounds like you have a committed team now. How do you keep that?
So here's, in any company that's growing rapidly, there's always this fight and tug of war. How do we automate things? How do we make things more efficient? How do we make sure that the process flows very quickly to take away the need for personal connection, right? Because if you automate everything, then your team doesn't need to grow up that quickly. It's cost efficient. There's always that discussion, right? Always like, we've got to make it efficient. But then there's always that discussion. The people that we work with, our members, like to have a conversation. Even if it's just to say hello, just chat. And so there's always that tug of war. So as Patty, our Chief Product Officer, who's worked with Bill for many, many years, Bill is a phenomenal engineer and is a mathematician and a musician and a scientist and all those things. It's all about driving efficiency, driving simplicity. All of that stuff that you see, make it simple on that app, millions of lines of codes, years of development. Simplicity doesn't happen without work.
Right.
But I think as a company and the leadership team that we're together, we realize that the most valuable thing we can do is be there for our members. So as we continue to develop and make efficient and make simple our back-end platforms, we will strive to continue to hold that. And the people that each team leader brings into their particular organization understands this.
So what does the company look like structurally, internally, from a sort of organizational standpoint? And where's the growth in that? What are you lacking right now in team? Where are you building your team out?
We started with 4 employees in 2019. We're tracking over 55. We have open recs right now, and we can go to 100 easily. And all of the departments, every sector is looking. So if you look at the structure, it's the technical structure, the engineering side. You look at the marketing and events structure, that's another environment. You look at perhaps one of the more and more, everything's important, but we're building a huge due diligence team and sourcing team for companies that we want. We continue to develop technologies that are new, that you haven't seen yet, So there's efficiency, getting involved with blockchain, so on rails and off rails. So that is another sector that's growing. Sales is a small team because a lot of the stuff that we do are referral based right now. But we're starting to opening that up. I mean, listening to Matthew, it's something that we have to do and continue to build. HR obviously will be important as we continue to go. The other sector that's really big and growing is the accounting and compliance sector, because that's really important to pay attention to different regulation. But I mean, all of these things, the way we structure it on an accounting level is very complicated on the back end, not in the front end. In the front end, no one sees this, but it's the back end. So, there's a leader for each of those divisions that take care of it.
Are you having?
They left me on the left. You don't do anything.
Are you finding it hard to hire people now? Are you finding it hard to find?
Actually, no.
No. Okay.
Not at all. It's like I said before. It's people. People putting their hands up and say, "We want to work with you." Okay. And it's not. We're not a unicorn company yet. Perhaps in the next 18 months, maybe. Right. But we don't ever get back says, "Hey, you got to pay us what Google pays us. You got to pay us what Apple pays us." It's like they are engaged with the mission and the values of the company, and they're willing to take a step back and do it for that.
You guys have any questions?
We need a mic for you.
I guess my concern is.
Well, don't start a sentence with a concern.
Okay. I'm gonna just I tell you what. I'm gonna just skip that part that I had written in terms of my concern. I'm just gonna get to the question. Okay, what is the sustainability plan to continue to allow for democratized access? Okay. Because I didn't tell you my concern. You can't frame your answer, but I like to tell you my concern so you can frame it. But
go for it.
Go for it. But don't start a sentence with it. Just turn it around.
Okay. Well, I guess once more regulations pass with all of the stuff that's going on with Congress, and I work with banks. Banks.
And you're talking about the United States specifically.
United States, EU. Okay. Well, those are the only two countries I've been in. They're planning on growing their portfolios in private markets. Meaning going after,
what we do.
Yeah. So when they get in the game, I'm concerned that just like, dealing with these other companies, it's hard to get, access, or when you get access, you're going to be paying $250, $500, and you have people talking about raising these accredited investor, the amounts and all this other, everything is going up. I love this 10,000 a block deal with Linqto, but if you got these investors, these bankers that are coming in and they're buying everything, they find out about Linqto, how little old me, how am I going to get, some Dapper Labs? Some BlockFi,
Okay, so
in the future.
I think that's a great question, actually. It's a really good question. And I'll ask you this question. Those big banks, Fidelity, Schwab, BlackRock, US, UK, Japan, Hong Kong, China, Taiwan, Korea, in all of these countries, there has existed private companies for decades. There has existed for decades all these big banks. There has existed for decades these private opportunities. For decades. What have they done with it? We're not like, we didn't come from heaven or hell or earth and say, hey, we've got a cool idea and we should execute on it. No, there are thousands of people doing this or trying or thinking about it. And when we did Global Investor Conference, that was the idea. Look globally at what's happening. Talk to entrepreneurs, builders, investors, all of these guys globally. See what's happening, right? I don't know. I don't know why we're being successful. I don't know when those guys will come on board. But what we do know is this. There has no one today said, Karim, we found a better company in doing what you do. There are companies, but they haven't just made it this simple yet.
I think an add-on question to that, and thank you for bringing it up. It's a fair question. Is what is you're mostly word of mouth and referral now. Is there a strategy to go more public and go more go more broadly out to the market?
Yes.
What's that?
Yes.
What's that look like?
So in fact, I remember first week of January of this year, we knew things were really working well. We knew that the technology was working well. We knew the product was working well. COVID was still around in the air. We decided in January, what does this next year look like? We had a phenomenal 2 years of growth. We said, now we've got to 10x this growth. What does this mean? Is we have to introduce the rest of the world to this. And so we're all out there speaking about it, talking about it, socializing it, evangelizing it, and making it known that we exist. Right. Is there an opportunity that Thomas is saying is like all of a sudden one of these big guys says, hey, we didn't think about that. Right. We should be doing it now because they're being successful. I mean, if you look at the relationship with Forge and they went, Forge has been in this business for a long time, and they went through a SPAC and became a public company. And even though their valuation is beautiful and their revenues are great, they're losing money every day. We're not. Right. And that just talks about the efficiency of the technology and the relationships that we have with our members, right? So is there going to be competition? Is there competition? Absolutely. Are we worried about it today? We're looking at behind our back because they are behind us. What Patty and Bill and the rest of the engineering team has given us a little bit of a head start with the technology that we've built, and we'll continue to accelerate that as we continue to look at new technologies, including blockchain and various other tokenization, all of these aspects. We continue to look, experiment, and deploy. So we're keeping ahead of the curve, and as long as we get support from the community, we'll continue.
I think that word community is a key word there.
Yeah.
Is that going to be your competitive advantage going forward? Let's say the big banks do get into this. There's a level of mistrust with the big banks and in the general public. Do you think that community that you're building is what's going to set you apart, even if you do have big competition come in?
It'll set us apart, but it'll set many other companies apart. Because if you start to look around us, if you look at the companies, if you look at, when we talk about let there be change, this was not a thoughtless idea. If you look at the various environments, if you look at, talk about the traditional big companies, where the FANG sort of companies, if you look at those companies, all they are concerned about is selling to a customer. And that customer is however you get it. Get that customer at the lowest possible price, sell at a margin, and there's a lot of churn. Look at the businesses that have developed over the last 5 years and the ones that are being really successful and taking a trajectory to the right with a hockey stick. I identify their mission, vision, and look at their customers or members or community. It's a vastly different set of different leadership, different mission, and different community that's supporting it. It's happening. We're just not paying attention to it. So I believe that is important to us.
Are you at all worried about global events with the war in Ukraine, the talk of a big global recession? What's your outlook on that, and how would that impact your growth and your ability to grow?
I'm just looking at the demographics in this room. Do we all remember? Boy, I know Lou and Matthew and Jared and all of you guys have a better memory than me. But talk to me about some of the timelines. 2008 crisis, 2012 crisis, 1999 crisis, 1985 crisis, right? 1985, we're at 2022. Bring up that chart on the screen today, and this is what you'll see, right? There's always up to the right with dips and corrections that will happen. Once you set your timeline of what is it that you want to achieve, these things are extraneous, right? If you're chasing something, you'll be successful. You're likely to fail if you don't know. You wake up one day, you miss that day. And that's the day the market rocked up. I mean, do you remember as recently as 2018 when the market tanked, how many hundreds of points because of the COVID thing? Yeah. And all of us said, we've got to sell, we've got to hold, what are we going to do? Some of us sold, some of us held, some of us invested more. The guys who invested, what happened in 2019, 2020? Look at all the COVID stocks. They threw valuations. In your mind, at that point, did you say, I'm trading in and out? Did you say, I'll be happy with the return of 20%, 12%, 5%, 7%? Did you say that? Did you say to yourself, I'm going to put a stop loss on my sales? As soon as I'm losing 5%, 7% of my public equities, am I stopping that sale? Am I getting out of it? Did we think about these things? If you think about what you want to achieve, plan for it, then why do we worry? We can't control crisis. We can't control political environments. We can't control Ukraine and Russia. We can't control today the weather. We should be paying attention on as global citizens on how to manage these things. It's only a community is going to do it. But in our personal lives, we've got to make decisions, right? I mean, let's pay attention to the fact that we're not bringing up today. Right now, France is going through a huge drought. China is going through a huge issue with chicken and fertilizer. We're going to see a global supply chain problem with energy from the China-Ukraine crisis, right? We see the interest rates. The interest rates that people talk about is like 7-8%. Oh, this is our issue with inflation. It's not true. It's not true. What is the price of transporting a container from the east coast of the United States to the west coast? What is that price? Used to be $6,000. Is it a 10% inflation? So 6,600? Call up anyone, and Thomas is going to do this. Because it's $25,000 today. So you start to look at these things, we are going to continue to face crisis. The recovery and the effects of COVID, we haven't seen pass through yet. The full effects have not been felt. What we're seeing coming is an additional problem. But also keep in mind that the countries that we live in are capitalist countries, and capitalists want to succeed. We want to make money. And so we're not really, make your parameters and drive towards that.
Right. Thank you. You guys have any more questions? How are we on time?
We're fine. Okay. Except, no, we're done with time. Sure. Yeah. Yo, use the mic, please.
No, as I see it, that Linqto is quite synchronous in time in terms of its first mover advantage, which I presume you have. And then, given the fact that a lot of entrepreneurs, traditional entrepreneurs, not tech entrepreneurs, are resetting their sort of new way post-COVID all over the world, right, of doing their own core businesses. I see that, a lot of people are looking to diversify, apart from their, capital in their own businesses. And the diversification is usually, as he said, alpha, beta, and core, right? Beta is your market investments, core could be your fixed income.
Yeah.
So I think the synchronicity is that, the alpha, which people are not aware, is, what Linqto can bring to. So what are your global plans in terms of, because there are too many of them asking me, how do we, sort of manage our lives? They know how to manage their businesses, but they don't know how to manage their investable surplus. So any...
Well, Lily, our board member, do you want to answer that? Give us strategic board direction.
Yeah.
No, that's a very good question. We have got that question, and I'm glad you brought it up. We have got that question from you as being in India and being in that environment, and you're surrounded by accredited investors who want to be able to deploy some of their capital to this asset class, which is great. We've got the same question from some of our partners in Australia, Asia, Hong Kong, and Europe. We have got several questions in these areas regularly, and they get frustrated with our answer. We wanted to make, with the help of Patty and her team, we wanted to make sure that we had a very stable, simple, efficient product, technology backend, that if we were, and when we are ready to go to any other regional country, localization will be easy. That's on the product level. You've also got to add in a couple of different things. The regulatory environment in those countries, we have to pay attention to. We then have to pay attention to the products that in those countries that maybe investors are willing to get involved in. And then we have to build also a market in those areas. So if we start detracting from our core value today, it dissolves our efficiency, right? So all of these things are valuable to us, but we're being very, very strict to say we need to focus. We need to make sure we're stable, growing, and profitable. And once that happens, we can explore other environments.
One last, go ahead. Yes.
Please use the mic.
He'll bring the mic over. Here.
Thanks. Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Yeah, I'm relatively new to Linqto, so I'm getting
Linqto.
educated.
Linqto
Oh,
22.
right. See what I mean?
Linqto.
That's a
Simple
perfect
investment.
example.
Linqto 22.
Anyway, one of especially listening to Matthew's talk, and Matthew, that was excellent. The overall perspective I'm seeing, again, as a naive, member, is that if you guys can implement the buy, hold, sell, the sell part of it, that's a game changer. So my question is, what is the probability that happening? Are there SEC issues and other regulatory issues to prevent that? Because if that happens, then you have instituted instant liquidity for all the investors. That will make it radically more popular, I think.
So let there be change. There will be change.
Yes.
There will be change relative. I'm not giving a time frame. There are certain requirements that we have to fulfill. And once those requirements, those are not in our hands. And once those are completed, there will be change. And right now on Linqto, if I'm quite sure, the value of our share is $350 today. After change, who knows where it'll go. But I'm not making any investment suggestions. Did we change it yesterday? Oh my God. Okay. All right. There is change already.
So get in now. Any other questions?
Yes.
Morning.
Morning.
Question I have is related to something I don't quite understand how the platform works. How do you access those pre-IPO shares? And I think that's sort of what could separate you or differentiate you if you're really good at finding the best opportunities in that pre-IPO stage. So how's that process done? Because I remember, if I'm not mistaken, a few months ago, you asked me about looking at a biotech company in Florida or something. Like, Gennaro, you know something about this. So I could see you guys really being differentiated if you could come up with a plan for how you could separate yourself completely from anybody else competing, just because you're really good at finding those opportunities. So what's the process to do that, I guess is the question.
That actually is a really great question. And actually, all the questions have been really great. That's a great question. Gives me a few seconds to think about it. But
And you're doing well. I'm gonna buy you a little bit more time.
Okay,
Keep thinking.
If you look at us, it's a financial marketplace, right? A marketplace has two sides: the buyers, the product, and the buyers, right? So the product is the pre-IPO shares, and then we have our customers, which are the members. So we have to build both in synchronicity. We can't overbuild on one and leave the other one because there'll be challenges. As Matthew pointed out, the more you support us, the more ability we have. The more you support us, the more ability we can get to that buy, hold, sell environment. In terms of how do we identify companies? If the first 2 years that we started the company, we were focused on the billion-dollar unicorn companies. That is great because a lot of the risk has been baked out of it. The downside of that, if it's not a frothy market, your upside on IPO liquidity event is less. It's not optimal that we would like it to be. If you go in and search and look at companies that are probably mid-market and growing, which is maybe a $250, $300, $400 million valuation company, you've still baked out a lot of the risks because the VCs in those companies have done a lot of due diligence, and we've seen management changes. When you move from a $50 million revenue company to a $100 million company to a $200 million company revenue model, the culture changes, as Rhett pointed out and asked the question. If you see those changes need to happen, and they will always happen because it's not the same people that run the original company, right? Once you start to see all of this stuff working in, and that's why we go for mid to late stage companies, because you've baked out a lot of the, baking out a lot of the risk. Then we have to look at what are the environments that are likely to face a liquidity event. A liquidity event is an IPO, merger, acquisition, sale, whatever the case may be. What are those companies? And what are the technologies? So today it's, Matthew pointed out, it's blockchain, fintech, payments, those sorts of companies. Now, biotech's interesting. Healthcare is interesting. SaaS companies are interesting. But if we start to diversify a lot of our thoughts, it becomes difficult to accumulate. Because remember this is an important thing. You can buy secondaries on the open market through a broker, and there's a commission based on that. Here's the difference. When we buy secondaries, we're actually investors in those companies. So all of those companies that you see on our app are companies that have our name on the cap table, which means we're investors. So when we win, our members win. If we lose, we're losing. So we want to make the best decision possible. So we look at the market, we look at the company, we look at who the other investors are, we look at our membership and see where there is an interest, because there are SaaS investors, there are fintech investors, blockchain investors. And once we get a cohort of biotech investors, then we'll start to bring those companies on board.
I'm glad you asked that, because that came up this morning at breakfast as a question. So that's why I ambushed you, so that we could do a Q&A.
Thank you.
You're going up against,
yeah.
Are they investing in theirs? Are they following that rule or not?
Not that I know of.
Okay. Because
They will
it really
create,
is, you're creating an investment club, which does really well.
There's different ways. There's different ways to do it. You can be a broker. You can be an investment club, which means an SPV is created that you decide to join, right? But it's different what we do. It's like we're investors and asking you if you want to join, and here are the 10 options, or 15 options, or 20 companies that you can invest in.
So we have time for what, one more maybe? One quick one? Anybody else? Going once?
Thank you, it's done.
Going twice? Going 3 times, we're done.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was great.
Yeah.
You ambushed me. You ambushed me, thank you. I will get you back.
Okay,
Get you back.